We got another little baby segment of Whet Your Palate. We're going to tell you a little bit about our special guest today, Jamie Gagliano. Right, from Nobel Black, real estate in Manhattan, the Hamptons. Really just a ton of experience. We had a great time talking to you, Jamie. Thank you for being part of Go With Your Palate.
Thank you guys so much.
And Jamie, I just want to say, and for our audiences out there, this episode meant so much to us. We are truly encouraged by your presence, and your story is very inspirational. And it just really, to me, it was just perseverance was just leading right there in my mind, like throughout your whole story. I think it's really going to mean a lot to a lot of people, and I just wanted to thank you for your vulnerability and just for sharing that with us. It's a true joy. So Thank you.
It is my story, right? We all have our stories, and I thank you for allowing me to share it with you.
Well, it's aspirational, inspirational, from opera singing to moving all throughout the East Coast to real estate.
We work on our New York accents.
Oh, man.
Jamie helps us out.
Tune in to Go With Your Palate. Do you, at your level of real estate, do you do open houses?
It depends. I personally very rarely do now, but yes, absolutely. At the super high end, no, because you want to screen people before they come in, so we don't just open up the doors. But for instance, we have something we just brought on the market for just under $4 million in Tribeca, and we will do an open house this weekend, and I'm hoping that it is very busy. Just as many eyes, as many, it's just one of those products that there's not a whole lot of. So the team will do an open house for that. And then during COVID, everything went by appointment.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like a lot of agents are doing that now, where they're doing it by appointment. I think that misses opportunity, because one of the best places for you to cultivate new clients or meet people is through an open house. And so, I think agents there are some buildings that don't allow them. Right. So there's all kinds of nuances to that.
All right. That is really interesting. I hadn't thought about it until we just started talking, where, number one, great way to meet new clients, future clients. And then, are you ever dealing with residential real estate that is less than $1 million in value?
Sure.
Okay.
We do, because we're client-based, right? So, our highest net worth individuals have nieces or nephews or kids that are looking for things, or, can you help my kid? They're coming to NYU. So absolutely. Is it something that Nobel and I deal with directly? Not so much, but we have people on the team that do that.
Okay.
I think just recently an article came back that like 233 cities in the U.S., the starting point is $1 million or more, which is fascinating, right? It's like, wow, it just goes to affordability and kind of, everything. There's certainly people out there that are looking under that price point. And there's some inventory here. It brings us into our co-op world here in New York. A lot of that stuff, you get more for your money in a co-op, and co-ops are a whole different animal, and we can get into that if you want. But
I hate to sound naive, but I have no idea what a co-op is. Why we live in the fucking country. Like, this is not.
So, and when you buy real estate, you essentially are buying you're buying square footage, right? You're buying a physical asset, and you own the square footage. So if you're in an apartment building and it's a condo, if you have 2,500 square feet, you're owning that 2,500 square feet. In a co-op, you're buying shares. So essentially, you're getting married to everybody else that lives in the building, because you own as a cooperative. So that comes with a lot of restrictions. So it's a very restricted purchasing process. They don't typically allow foreigners. They only allow a certain amount of financing, if they allow financing. There's several buildings on the Upper East Side that you can't finance at all. Some of them are 50%. Some of them are, you have to put, at least 30% down. And then you go through a very rigorous application process. You basically have to disclose everything. Every piece of your financials. You need letters, you need, I actually just went through it, and I've gone through it twice. Why anybody chooses to do that, I have no idea, but they do. If you want to live in a certain place, I think 75% of our inventory on the Upper East Side, certainly closer to Fifth and Madison, where people really want to be, they're co-ops, and those are the pre-war older buildings, that were converted in the 80s, and then there's an interview process. So submit the application, you basically disclose everything to them. There's no privacy at all. And then you go to an interview and then they could say, yeah, no thanks. And they don't have to give you a reason why.
And that interview is conducted by other, I don't want to call them
members
tenants,
of the board.
other owners.
Yeah, they're members, so there's a board.
Okay.
So members of the board, and those boards are elected by the individuals on the board are elected by the other residences.
So you're owning a share, and is that so? If there's 100 apartments in this building, you're going to own 1% share.
It depends on the size. So the shares are calculated based on how much
Square footage.
real estate you have. So square footage, if you have outdoor space, all that kind of stuff. So and again, it's very restricted. A lot of the buildings don't allow subletting. Again, no foreign buyers, so that can weed out 50% of your buyer pool. They're restricted if sometimes you can have a guarantor, sometimes you can't. Sometimes they don't allow co-purchasing. Sometimes they don't allow parents buying for children. They don't allow gifting. So it's very restrictive. Never investment properties, right? Because you can't rent these. Typically, you can't rent them out, or you can only rent them out maybe 2 out of 5 years, things like that.
And so the reason for this, well, first, is this are these government subsidized or funded at all? No, this is just okay. So it starts off with a group of people kind of buying a building.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most discriminatory processes out there.
It sounds horrible. I don't want a colonoscopy.
It teeters on like, wow. And some people have challenged rejections and things like that because they feel like, oh, I wasn't accepted for something that is very discriminatory. But again, they don't have to disclose why. So it's hard to prove that.
That is fascinating.
And I saw a surge in co-ops in LA, like on the West Coast side in the past years, that in these areas that they weren't doing them before. And the only really benefit I saw, which I don't know if it translates to the New York market as well, is that if you did get involved in a co-op, that you could get shares for less amount of money, really, than it was if you were actually just buying a loft straight out in a building.
Yeah, you get more for your money in a co-op. The price per square foot, and we don't really talk about price per square foot with co-ops. So ultimately, we do it on the back end because you're not buying square footage. But you definitely get more for your money if you're willing to or can go through that process. The financial process is a huge part of it, meaning that they want to know where the money's coming from and if you can afford it, and if it's a long, that you have a long history of financial stability. All of that, because you're essentially owning with all these other people, right? So it's like getting married. Whereas, when you move into a condo, it's like you're kind of dating.
Yeah, if somebody's not able to pay for it, does that fall back onto the board to kind of reclaim that percentage?
So it ultimately affects the financial health of the building.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right? If somebody's not paying their common charges, which is what they're called. Well, in a co-op, it's called maintenance, which includes, call it HOA. You guys probably understand it as HOA and your taxes, right? Whereas you buy a condo, you're paying common charges, which is equivalent to HOA, and taxes separately. But, everybody's responsible. This board and this cooperative is responsible for the financial health of the building, right? So they want to make sure, you going into a co-op, you want to make sure, okay, what's the health of the building? Do they have a financial reserve? How are they going to deal with any emergencies that come up? We have something in New York called Local Law 11, where a lot of these old buildings have to be repointed. They check the masonry, which can be, if it's a bigger building, could be a huge expense, right? Yeah. So if the elevator goes out. So, the financial health of the co-op is very important as going in as a shareholder. So that's a part of the due diligence process. But yeah, if somebody's not paying their portion, everybody suffers from that because it affects the financial health of the whole building.
And do you deal in quite a few co-ops, or is that kind of a minority part of the
No, it's a good percentage of what we do.
Okay.
It's a good percentage of what we do across because it's a big percentage of our real estate here in New York, especially in areas like the Upper East Side, like the Villages, the West Village, Greenwich Village, those kind of areas. But I would say that the uptown co-ops are more restrictive than the downtown co-ops.
Right.
Got it.
Well, I mean, I think we should probably do an introduction.
A whole different world.
It's a whole new world. Yeah, until we get into the whole new world, we should do a proper introduction.
Yeah.
Jamie.
Yeah. So, okay. So we've got Jamie Gagliano. one of the partners at Noble Black, is one of the premier real estate firms in New York City, branching out beyond New York, getting into the Hamptons. You got an amazing track record. What do you have, 18 years or so in the industry?
I think well, 20 years in my professional career, either in finance or real estate. I'm going into my 12th year in real estate, and then I did 10 years prior to that in finance.
Well, we're happy to have you on Go With Your Palette. Another episode. Got me, Joe Wagner, and co-host Chris Fat Mario Rubio. And we're going to talk about real estate. And I've already learned more than... I thought I knew something about real estate, but obviously I don't know.
We're talking co-ops, dude. You didn't
when I think of the co-op, I think of where we store our wine before it gets shipped out. Because it is a co-op. That's not... I didn't...
Yeah.
The wine service co-op. That's what we used to use, and it was kind of the same platform where like all the producers, Anyways.
Well, that kind of happens too, right? Because if somebody wants to have like a shared wine storage, right? You're doing that with other people. I mean, that actually happens in some of our condo buildings now. You could buy wine storage where people can. Because if you have a small apartment, you have a big wine cellar. In some of these big amenitized buildings, they'll have wine storage that you can purchase. And then you go downstairs and people have a locker and it's shared with the other residences in the building.
All right, we're going to put a pin in that because I like that idea. And I think that we need to figure out, like, we need a sommelier to go around to these co-ops and, like, manage all the inventories and help them.
The condos. You're not going to see that in co-ops, but condo buildings, you'll see it.
Well, also, it's a thing, too. If you're not paying your shares, your neighbors be knocking on your door.
Exactly.
Right? They're like, hey,
unfortunately.
how are we going to do this?
All right, so before we get into real estate, I got to ask about your last name, Gagliano.
Gagliano.
Is that, are you...
Wait, you say it like...
It's Gagliano.
No, like she does it.
Like Gagliano.
Romantic.
Gagliano.
Like. So the GLI is one syllable in Italian, right? Gagliano.
Gagliano.
Yeah.
But,
all right. Is it so?
I'm
is
very
that
much American, and so people, I've been called Jamie Gags. My dad was Jim Gags. Like the gag part of it is I can't get away from it. Like, so for the most part in the U.S., it's
I'm sorry.
That wasn't on the dude. You have to come in. She's trying to get away from it. Now we gotta go into it.
I am a West Coast American. I have very little culture in my blood. But I will ask: is that Sicilian or is that Southern? Yeah.
It's Sicilian.
Okay,
yeah,
so
my dad's family was from Palermo.
Okay, my grandfather is from his father was from Palermo, and so I actually got a chance to go down there.
My grandfather was from Palermo.
I got to visit down there, and I stole some cuttings. It was a blast. It was I did. Dude, we're making wine out of it now. It's awesome. I brought some of the stuff from the old country back, some Nero de Avila. But
dude, I just don't want like the wine mafia coming after us, dude. I don't want to be sleeping with the fishes, dude.
Dude, the night
we're gonna have to edit.
So I took them out, or like went out and did the cuttings the day before I was leaving. I drove back, so that was like down near Syracuse. I drove back to Palermo, stayed the night, and I swore to God I was gonna get like offed that night.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep at all. And
wait a minute. So I don't need. What's a cutting? I'm sorry.
So you take the budwood like while it's dormant.
Okay.
So during winter, and so you take these just like a stick of the wood, and you can bring it back here and propagate it onto another grapevine, and then grow more grapevines over a period of generations of those, until you have a block or a vineyard big enough to actually have production off of it. And so
is that legal? To do that, to just go in and take cuttings?
I mean, I did it the responsible way. So
back to Noble Black. And partner.
Like, do you ask permission to do that, or is it just like me walking down Park Avenue and clipping some tulips?
Being that there's no video footage of it, and nobody knows exactly where the property is, it could have just been a wild grapevine on the side of the road, and it accidentally got into my bag, traveled back to America with me, bypassed USDA. Et cetera.
In a way, it could look like mating. You're mating like plants, right? So you're just helping love, like
that's
two
it.
together.
Yeah,
love, so they can procreate.
Love has no boundaries.
Like this is about love, So there's no rules.
Love has no boundaries.
Love.
Yeah.
Would that work at the courtroom? I don't know.
Dude, look. Jamie's family got over here. My family got over here from Italy. Why can't the Grapevines families come over here? It's
right.
Yeah.
True.
Really.
I like it.
Anyway, so thank you for sharing that. Have you been back to Sicily?
No, I haven't. And we're actually going to Italy over Thanksgiving. I don't think we'll make it to Sicily. My husband's never been to Italy at all, so which is a tragedy. So we're gonna do truffle season over Thanksgiving in Tuscany, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah, okay, that sounds awesome. Well, okay, so back to the real estate. So we talked about the co-ops. We're going to call that our cold open, I guess, because we just jumped right into it.
That's how we do.
You just never know. You just want to start conversing, whatever.
Yeah.
So so tell us about the journey to where you're at now. Like, where did you originally started off with an interest in opera, correct?
Yeah, I was a professional opera singer. It was my first career.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to music school.
In New York.
Yes, my passion. So no, so my family is from New Jersey. But I didn't really grow up in New Jersey. We went back and forth between New Jersey and Pennsylvania. I went to 7 different schools before I graduated high school. We traveled a lot back and forth between New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And then when I was going into my junior year of high school, my family moved to Florida. My mom's family had moved there in the late 80s to this area called Palm Coast in Northeast Florida. And I went kicking and screaming, of course, because who wants to move in the middle of high school? And that's my interest in music started in middle school. And it was, you're in the choir and then, musical theater and doing all of that. And so, but when I was doing that in my high school in Pennsylvania at the time, I didn't really click with I couldn't really get into it as much as I wanted to. They weren't very accepting of me or several. So even though I went to Florida kicking and screaming, it ended up being one of the best things for me because that music teacher really kind of took me under her wing and recognized the talent. And that's really where it started to cultivate. And then I ultimately went to music school, to a private school in Florida, Stetson University. And going into that experience, opera just kind of happened. It's like I opened up my mouth one day and it's like, you're an opera singer. I didn't really have much formal training. I have that Italian kind of instinct in me a little bit, but there's a lot of passion and, people are like, whoa, like slow down, like it really comes out in the music, which is a gift. And it really was a gift. And so when I went to college, and I went to college I didn't go right out of high school. I spent about 10 years as the cantor and assistant music minister for a Catholic church. So grew up Catholic, went to Catholic school, part of my schooling. And that's really where I learned how to become a musician. Like those 10 years doing that. I mean, standing in front of our congregation was very big. We were like 2,000 to 4,000 families. So, and it was the first time they had ever hired a professional cantor with you, which, if you will, which I was making great money. I was singing every mass, every funeral, every wedding, it was basically my show. And I really learned how to become a musician there. And it became my extended family. So I did that in between high school and college. And then I went to college and continued to do that because it paid for, I would drive 40 minutes from college to, putting on my stockings in the car while I'm driving to go do a funeral. And I would sing 3 songs and make $150. I mean, that was, in the late 90s, early 2000s. So like, this is amazing. I don't have to wait tables. I can just use my gift.
Yeah.
How big was your choir?
So our choir in college, I think it was very, very curated. We were probably like 50 to 60 people.
And doing all classical?
For the most part, we would do. My choir experience in college was awesome. The concert choir was awesome. The conductor was amazing. So we do everything from gospel to classical to all of it, all choral works. It was really a great experience. And I just all of a sudden it was just like you're an opera singer, and so then I was the lead in all of the operas that we did in college, and I started to do this competition round. My voice teacher was like, here, start going to these competitions, and I would just keep winning them. And you're like, oh, okay, you're kind of like, what do I do with this kind of thing? And it was fun and it was exciting. And then I was accepted to my first young artist program while I was still finishing my degree, and that was in Baltimore, and I did that. And that threw me for a loop a little bit. It was my first kind of professional experience. Just, they really work you really hard. And so I felt like they pushed my voice a little bit more than it should have been. I'm a dramatic mezzo is what they call it. So I'm a mezzo soprano, but I have high notes like a soprano, but they have a lot of meat to them, and I have the low range as well. So it's a unique voice type. And I was probably singing things I shouldn't have been singing at the age that I was, but I was able to handle it. So the reaction to me was like, wait, you shouldn't be singing that. But it's like, but you can. So what do we do with this? And then I looked more like a Carmen. If you're familiar with opera, I looked like a Carmen, but that didn't really fit in my voice very well. So I was getting hired for that, and that was a little bit of a struggle for me. But that's neither here nor there.
And then when you went into singing, your title was cantor.
Yes, that's the church. Yeah.
And that was solo.
Yes. Yeah. So So the Catholic Church, like throughout the Mass, there's opportunities. So like I would be up there leading the congregation in song, but there were things that you would do solo. So like the responsorial psalm is done by the cantor, and I don't know if you guys go to church or know anything about that, but
we're both Roman
and
Catholics.
I would do solos and what's that?
I was just gonna say we're both Roman Catholics, so yeah, we don't really go to church.
Yeah.
We've been.
We've been. We get there.
Yeah, I became known. My Ave Maria is pretty good. So it's almost like I call my family now. I'm like the family clown, because like anytime somebody gets married or dies or anything that happens in church, they're like, "Can you sing the Ave Maria?" And I do. And I do, but that was a moment for me, because I would, for whatever reason, it was just something that it was a song that I really was really good at, and I remember people in the congregation coming up to me and being like, I want you to sing the Ave Maria when I die, and you'd be like, no, like you're not going to die, and then it happened. And it was like, wow. And that was really emotional for me. I was just like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. Like, I can't, these people become a part of, their religious experience, right? Some people be like, I come to church just to hear you sing. You help me feel closer to God. I mean, it was such a amazing experience that you don't realize how music affects people. And it really does in all kinds of ways. And so that first time I had to do that was emotional for me.
Yeah, I bet, holding those notes while you're, emotionally affected. God.
Yeah, and the fact that somebody had asked for it and you were able to be put in that position where it's like, oh, now I have to do this because I said I would, and you kind of say, oh, that's not going to happen, and then it happens. And then I've done it, for family. I mean, I think singing at my father's funeral was one of the hardest things that I've ever done, but it's something that you knew they would want. So you just get yourself through it and you say, I'm going to share this gift that I have because that's what they would have wanted.
Yeah. And are you still singing on a regular basis now?
No? I'm kind of 150% in what I'm doing or not. It's, if I'm singing, I want to be front and center at the Met. It was a lifestyle choice for me. Well, there was something that kind of forced me out of it, but then it became a lifestyle choice.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that never leaves you. Like, my mom, she played the accordion growing up for a number of crazy reasons. And then she hated it. She absolutely hated it for other reasons. But every time we got her drunk at Christmas, she'd pull her accordion out and just rock away. And it was like, fuck yeah, Mom, this is awesome. So
that was never me. I was never the people like, oh, will you like sing in front of the family? No, I don't do that. I don't. I got to have like a huge audience. I don't sing in the shower.
I like it. You want
myself. But...
You want to be like, you like that attention. A lot of people are the opposite.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother level to be able to perform like that. Cause I'm a professional shower singer. I mean, I'm one of those people, like, when I started singing, they were like, you will not be an opera singer. Yeah, you won't sing at all in the house.
Like, give me your best Beastie Boys rendition. Like,
I think Alex, I think there might have been one night where we were out. We were, went out, came home, and I think they might have gotten me to do it. But that doesn't happen very often.
Okay.
That's not, yeah, I'm not one to just bust out in song.
And if it's the right vino, maybe.
Yeah,
the wine's flowing.
It was the right vino that night.
Yeah, Italian, it just starts bubbling up in your heart. You want to let it out.
I'm no opera singer, but man, karaoke can be a real release for me.
You sing a lot.
Hey, you sound like you have like your speaking voice sounds like you could be like a baritone, like a really good baritone.
Wow.
Want to give us a shot?
If your kiss turn me to stone.
It's in there.
Did he do that? That was an audition, dude. No.
What?
We're bringing you to New York.
I'm quitting this. I'm gonna go.
You guys are gonna do that. That would be cool.
So I love that work, because I know when you're young, like, and so many people kind of disregard the arts, whatever that is, whatever that outlet is, whether it's music, singing, instruments, painting, culinary, whatever, and a lot of people just kind of like disregard that and go straight towards their career path, right? And so being able to have and you had a really solid amount of time of making that art form your career path before you got into a more kind of corporate style of business, and I'm sure that
for sure. I never thought I would be. I always thought from that moment on, I always thought that I would be a singer. Like that is who I am, in what I feel like who I am in my body. I always thought that would be the path, but then life has another plan.
Yeah, and do you feel like that? But do you feel like that sort of period where it was purely art, that also happened to be your job, but purely art that has helped you in your career as you got into finance and then into real estate? Is that correct?
Yeah. So my journey from that to New York, because I can't, and Chris and I talked about this a little bit. Life experience and what I've gone through in my life, you can't talk about where I am today without talking about that, because it was such a huge pivotal time for me. So, I was on this I was so hyper focused on, I'm going to be an opera singer. Like this is what I was meant to do. And it took me a long time to figure that out. I mean, I was never one of those kids that was like, I want to be an astronaut or I want to be an architect. I just didn't know. Family was very important. My obligations to family were very important. But then all of a sudden, in your, early 20s, you realize, wow, I have a gift. Like somebody gave me a gift. And then I really loved doing it. And you learn through that, and we'll talk about this, but it really taught me discipline. It taught me things that I use every day in my life and my work. I learned from being a musician and those times. And so I was hyper focused on that. This is what I'm doing. And during that time, during college, I met someone. I fell in love at a very young age. I was 20. I guess I met my first husband when I was 22, and we were married by the time I was 26. We got married in 2001, so I was around 26, and we got married. But I still was hyper focused on being a singer. So, those our first years of our marriage, I just was away all the time. And the last year I sang, I was away 8 months of that year.
Wow.
Just going from place to place. And one of the trips that I was on, I was doing a young artist program in Des Moines, and it was July of 2004, and I got a phone call. It was just like, your husband's missing. Like, you need to come home. And that's all they really told me. And we were coming towards the end of our time. It was right around 4th of July, right after 4th of July. We were coming towards the end of our time there, but I was supposed to go on to something else. And my journey home was really emotional. Like, I cried the whole time. I didn't know why I was crying. I couldn't get in touch with him, right? So that was emotional. It's like, where is he? Is he okay? My family. And then I landed in Orlando, and my sister-in-law at the time was waiting for me at the gate. And you're like, I didn't think that was odd. right? Like they don't at that time, they're not letting people through security to get to a gate unless you're on a flight. But I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, have you talked to Jimmy? She's like, no. And then we get down to baggage claim, and my entire family's there, his entire family's there. And then they told me that he had passed away in baggage claim.
Oh.
And I fell to the floor. You know, you just maybe my gut knew that something was really wrong, but at that moment it was just like you could do nothing but just fall to the floor. And I was literally in the middle of baggage claim. Like they wouldn't give them a private room. Come to find out that when they made the phone call to me, he was already passed. They had found him, but they're like, don't tell her, you know, let her get on the plane. And my whole life changed. I mean, I was 28 years old or 29 years old, and I was a widow.
Jeez.
And you just don't even know what to do. And it wasn't until I got in the car that I was like, so how did he pass away? And he committed suicide. And it was so surreal. I mean, this year will be 21 years. But it's so surreal. And I went on this journey of, first of all, you go into like a little survival mode a little bit, and also now dealing with it destroyed my family, like all the things that come with that. You know, you can't even imagine. But I very quickly, you know, got through that, but very quickly got back on, I can't stay here. You know, I can't stay in this environment. My family was just devastated. I mean, everybody was somber. I mean, his family, you can't imagine, right? Losing a child. He was 27. You know, he was a year younger than me. Losing a child and their mourning process was so different than mine, right? Like a spouse, yes, but to lose a child is just you know, you can't even imagine what that is. And I still don't know what that feels like. And so a month later, so he died on July 7th. A month later, I got in a U-Haul truck and I just went to New York. I just beelined to New York because while I was in Des Moines, I signed with an agent. So like the career was about to take off. I signed with an agent. I had gigs lined up for the next year. I was like, I'm going to Europe. I'm going to sing in Europe. I mean, the career was about to blow up. And so I was a girlfriend of mine that I was singing with in Des Moines. She's like, come here, come to New York, live with me. I have, you know, a huge apartment and it's $500 a month, which was like, okay, you know, and great, I'm in. And my best friend, who I went to college with, came. He was living in New York. He drove down and we got in a U-Haul and I made that journey. And my family thought I was crazy. They were very critical of the decision, but there was nothing there for me. I felt like I was just going to get lost in this mourning, right? And it was just going to be, I was like, I just need to move on. And it was running away a little bit as well, right? I was running towards something, but I was also running away.
Understandably so. It's, I mean, that's a lot of trauma.
So you know, you get in the car and it was like a hurricane was hitting. And I was like, I'm driving, I'm getting in this truck. And then we get in the U-Haul. My friend he's going to drive first. I put my feet up on the dash and the whole window cracks of the U-Haul. And they didn't have another one. And I was like, excuse my French, fuck it, we're going. And we drove from Florida to New York with the passenger side windshield, basically, you know, spidering the whole time. Yeah. You're like, it's going to blow up or not. But we just we made our way. We got there, got to New York. It was pouring rain. I didn't know where I was. And I didn't even know the neighborhood I was moving into. My girlfriend was like, in this huge apartment. It ended up being, and if you're not from New York, you don't know this, but it was in Inwood, which is the highest point of Manhattan. It's like the 200 block, right before you get to the Bronx. And a lot of singers live up there because it's affordable. And it was a 5th floor walk up. And I lived on the corner of Seaman and Dykeman. Was like my address. And the block above me was Cummings. And you're like, what's happening?
Who named those streets? I mean, come on.
Oh my God. What is happening? It became, I mean, it was insane. But we had a huge grand piano in the living room. My bedroom was massive. And so here I was in New York. And I was like, here I am. And something changed for me musically. I was doing auditions and I wasn't nailing them. And my agent is like, something's different. And something's different because I was afraid. I was a very emotional singer, and I had this wall up, and I couldn't get past the wall without being overly emotional. And so I said, I need to get a job. I canceled all my gigs. I was like, I need to get a job. I want to stay in New York, but it's clear that I'm not going to sing right now. I need to get a job. And so my girlfriend said, here, call a temp agency. And I did. It was Solomon Page was a temp agency. And the next day I was sitting at the reception desk of a hedge fund. And at the time they were in their first couple of years. And fast forward 9 years later, I was the chief of staff to the CEO. We had built a family office, and I discovered, wow, I have another talent. And that all came out of survival, right? I mean, I remember the day they were like, do you want to come here, work here full time? And I was like, sure, because I'd started in August as a temp, and by March of the following year, they had offered me a job. And that all just came out of one, being in the right place at the right time with the right people, but also I can do that. I can help with that. Finding these opportunities where, the assistant didn't show up one day to the partner. So it's like, I can jump in and just jump and figure it out. I knew nothing about a hedge fund. I didn't know what a ticker was. Like, I knew nothing, but it's like, you know what? I can help these people. And so just taking those opportunities, and then it happened with the CEO, the assistant just didn't show up and was like, I can do this. I can cover him. And we got along, and we went from, at the time there was only 17 people at the hedge fund. When I left, I think there was 100. But it was such an amazing experience. It was really hard, but I'll never forget Larry, who was the CEO, and who's now a client, which I'm proud to say, even though, our separation was very hard. He looked at me and he said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I just looked at him and I was like, I remember exactly what I was wearing, exactly that moment. I was like, I have no idea. I'm just trying to survive.
Is this really the end? Unbelievable. Find out next week.